Let's talk about one of Thailand's most feared spirits. This isn't a ghost that just haunts some old dusty house. No, this is a spirit that can hide inside the person living right next door. We're going to deconstruct the story of the Phi Pob.
All right, so this is the picture that most of us probably have in our heads, right? Straight out of a horror movie. The idea is that the Phi Pob is this terrifying spirit that takes over a human body, and because it's starving, it devours the organs of its victims. It kills you slowly, from the inside out. It's a classic, absolutely horrifying monster.
But here's where we need to take a step back. Because what if the real horror of the story isn't the ghost at all? What if we peel back the monster myth and find something way more complicated and, frankly, more human? What if this legend tells us less about the supernatural and more about our own societies, our fears, our conflicts, and how we keep each other in line?
So, first things first, let's lock in the image we all know, the pop culture icon. This is the version of the Phi Pob that's famous for movies and scary stories. This is the myth we're here to take apart.
Okay, so the core definition is all about being an internal predator. It doesn't attack you from the outside, it literally hollows you out from within. I mean, that idea of an invisible internal threat is just uniquely terrifying. But where does a spirit like this even come from?
Well, according to folklore, there are two main paths. The first is called puede, which is basically an inherited curse. It's passed down through the family bloodline, kind of like a dark and terrible heirloom you can't get rid of. The second is mon. This happens when someone practicing black magic messes up. They break a sacred rule or their power just backfires on them big time. Either way, you end up with a malevolent spirit looking for a host.
Okay, so now that we have that movie monster version clear in our heads, I want you to just kind of throw it out. We're moving away from folklore and into what anthropologists and researchers have found in real communities. And trust me, the reality is way more interesting.
And here is the first massive course correction. Forget the ghoulish creature you've imagined. In the communities where this belief is strongest, people overwhelmingly describe the Pob not as a physical monster, but as an invisible force. It's an entity, not a creature.
And you can see that divide right here. On one side, you've got the movie monster, a physical creature that attacks healthy people, but on the other, you have the actual folkloric belief, an invisible force that possesses people who are already sick or weak. It's seen as a consequence of breaking some taboo, not a random external attack. The whole focus shifts from a monster outside to a crisis within.
So this means we're not really talking about being eaten by a monster. The core phenomenon, the central event, is what's known as Pai Kao, spirit possession. It's the belief that an unseen force has entered someone's body, causing them to change. And that one detail, it reframes everything.
Okay, so if it's not a literal organ-eating ghoul, then why? Why create a story about a spirit that consumes you from the inside? Well, the answer comes down to a deeply human need to explain the unexplainable.
I want you to just picture it. You're in a rural village, maybe a century or two ago. No doctors, no labs, no concept of viruses or bacteria. How do you possibly make sense of it when a perfectly healthy person just dies in their sleep? Or when you watch a loved one slowly waste away from a disease that seems to be eating them alive?
The belief in Phi Pob gave people a framework. It was a pre-scientific way of diagnosing what was going on. It wasn't just some scary campfire story. It was a coherent explanation for real-world tragedies that would otherwise feel completely random and meaningless. And people used this belief to explain all sorts of things. That sudden death in your sleep, known in Thai as lai tai, that was the work of a Pob. Those awful wasting diseases, like tuberculosis, where the body seems consumed from within, also the Pob. Even things like psychological breakdowns or mass hysteria in a village could be understood as this one malevolent force at work.
So, what starts as an explanation for illness then evolves into something with incredible social power. This is where the ghost becomes less of a spirit and more of a tool, or even a weapon.
You see, the real power wasn't in the spirit itself. It was in the ability for one person to point a finger at another and accuse them of being its host. An accusation could be used to enforce social norms, to settle old scores, and even to kick people out of the community. And this isn't just a theory. This is a documented, real-world case. A woman named Mai Kam married a widower, but his children didn't like her. They were afraid she'd get the family inheritance. After trying and failing to break them up, the children used the ultimate sanction, as the report calls it. They accused her of being a Pob. The community believed it, and both she and her husband were banished from the village. The accusation had nothing to do with a ghost. It was a tool to win a property dispute. It's a chilling example of how a supernatural belief can have devastating, real-world consequences. You know, it's fascinating because so many cultures have similar legends that serve these kinds of social functions. Share your own local versions in the comments below. You might be surprised to find out just how many of these myths have relatives in other countries.
So, what about today? Does this belief still work the same way? And is the response always so violent? It's time to correct another common misconception, one that's definitely fueled by all those horror films. The movie version almost always ends with an angry mob, right? Torches, pitchforks, a violent exorcism. And look, while that kind of violence and expulsion has certainly happened, research shows that it's not the norm at all. It's the dramatic exception, not the everyday rule. What's much more common is a community response that's focused on restoring harmony. First, the villagers will get together to discuss the problem, the string of sicknesses or bad luck. But here's the crucial part. Instead of hunting for a person to blame, they'll often invite Buddhist monks to perform a cleansing ceremony for the entire village. And after that, individual families will focus on protecting their own homes with blessed talismans.
The goal, most of the time, is to restore balance. And why? Because making a direct accusation is incredibly risky. The person you accuse isn't some lone outcast. They have family, friends, a whole social network. A contested accusation could cause a massive conflict and split the village right down the middle. So, to preserve that social harmony, communities often prefer these collective, non-confrontational solutions.
So if it's not always a violent hunt, and modern medicine can explain the illnesses, why is the concept of Phi Pob still so powerful? Why are we still telling these stories, beyond just a love for a good scare?
I think this quote from a local intellectual named Samchai Nilatheri really gets to the heart of it. He said, "Village pop eats organs. Those in power eat rocks and cement. That's also pop." The idea of a creature that consumes a community from within has become this powerful metaphor for a very modern kind of evil.
The Phi Pob of today might not be a literal ghost eating your liver. It might be a corrupt official embezzling public funds. It could be a corporation exploiting local resources and destroying the land. The true horror of the Phi Pob, then and now, isn't a supernatural monster. It's the very real fear of being consumed from within by a force you can't see, a neighbor you trusted, or a system that was supposed to protect you. And that is a fear that is truly timeless. So what are the modern Phi Pobs you see in the world? Let us know in the comments what country you'd like us to investigate next, and if you know someone who loves international horror but doesn't know the real story behind the myths, share this explainer with them. And make sure to subscribe because our next investigation connects this whole idea of social haunting to a completely different part of the world.